This is the newsroom for today, Tuesday, June 9, 2020. We are broadcasting to you on E1, Scar TV, NTN and Tarsi TV in Partika. In the headlines, watershed moment as District 4 recount results certified. Attorney at law Kamal Ramkaran says GCOM is obligated to declare the results from the recount.
So their function is to exercise direction and supervision over the administrative conduct of elections. They don't have any other powers. They have to run elections.
New political parties reflect on testing elections process.
The reason we've been so polarized is that there's a winner-take-all system. So today we have a winner, but we have a loser. So we have a triumphant party, but we also have an abject and desperate party.
As bodies piled up in New York from COVID-19, a Guyanese senator has spoken out. And in sport, a Guyanese cricket commentator reflects on a COVID-19 journey that has given him a new perspective on life. With the news, I'm Avenash Ramzam. Thanks for joining us. We started by telling you now that it was a watershed moment on Tuesday afternoon as parties signed off on the certificate of recount for District 4, the country's largest electoral district, showing clearly an overall win for the PPP and also showing the fraud that was committed when the District 4 returning officer, Claremont Mingo, made his first two declarations. Some of the political parties' representatives and one GCOM commissioner spoke with the media afterwards.
In terms of what we intend on using the seat that we have gained for, we intend on using it for Guyana. We have no other purpose except to serve this country. What we intend on doing is sitting down and talking with the new movement and the new and united Guyana and see how we could take that seat and utilize it to hold the incoming administration accountable. What has happened, the same kind of accountability that was asked of this outgoing administration, if I were to be so presumptuous, is what we are going to have to do to the incoming administration. We will have to ensure that that administration, regardless of who sits there, is held to account to the people and that we can never go down this path again.
Do you think the observation reports have cast a shadow on the electoral process?
I don't think so at all. I think what they've done, and I'm very grateful that the media was part of this exercise, granted not in there, but to ask of the political leaders the very difficult questions. And even though we are stakeholders at the political level inside there, we've asked them for proof of anything to support their allegations, and there have been no proof whatsoever. And I think that is all in the public domain right now. So I don't see how the observation report would impact anything at this point.
The APNU AFC did not sign the certificate, but every other party that contested in Region 4 was there to sign. So I think it went very smoothly.
Do you think the observation reports can cast a shadow doubt on the electoral process at this time?
My view, no, because the order that was issued was very clear, and therefore we look forward to the next step, where the CEO is going to put together his report and present that to the GCOM, and GCOM would then do a declaration.
Do you care to elaborate on the change in the figures that you would have noted from this declaration for this particular region and the previous declarations?
Well, we know that the declaration that was first issued by GCOM varies with this current one. But this declaration now, well, it's not a declaration as yet. This certification matches what we have on the SOPs. So when you compare SOP with the certification of these SORs, they are basically the same thing. Where you had the variance is the numbers by which Mr. Mingo would have declared. So obviously there's a mismatch there. And so with this recount, we have been able to correct that.
I think that the observation report has already cast more than a shadow of doubt on the process. The process from day one we went to the very first box, we have been seeing numerous anomalies, and it has been coming to front. So yes, I believe that has already been done, and it's up to the CARICOM team right about now and then the CEO also to send that report through to the Commission.
I would love to start off by thanking the youths of Guyana. The youths have shown that they are courageous, they've shown that they're brave, they've shown that they can get up and do things. And they have done that. We can see that from the start. the youths have come out, and I estimate about 85% of the convention center was filled with youths at about the third week at the end of this. And I would love to thank the youths, and I'd love to encourage them further. The Guyanese youths, wherever youths that are coming into our country now, get involved and keep pushing forward, because this nation needs people like us, people like me, people like you, to get behind each other and to support each other at this junction in our nation.
What we now expect from the CEO is a summary of these 10 certificates which contain the results of each district, and we expect from him a concatenation or a summary of the observation reports that would be part of this each district. As you know, the CEO had asked for 5 days after the last box was counted. Well, this is day 2, and I believe we are ahead of schedule. I personally am expecting this report from the CEO within a matter of days, and as pursuant to the order, 3 days subsequent to the receipt of that report from the CEO, we have to make a declaration. So whatever we do in the meanwhile at the commission level, we will deal with that. As we speak, there is no commission meeting scheduled, and the obvious reason for that is the fact that we have not received the report of the CEO. I anticipate as soon as that report from the CEO is in the hands of the chairman, she will summon a meeting for us to discuss the next step.
Now, the Guyana Elections Commission, GCOM, is obligated to use the figures from the national vote recount to declare the winner of the March 2 general and regional elections, Attorney-at-Law Kamal Ramkaran has said. Ramkaran was an attorney in the cases which sought to compel the cabinet to resign and for the government to call elections following the passage of the December 21, 2018 no-confidence motion. A tabulation of the votes from the recount shows the PPP has won the elections by over 15,000 votes. Ramkaran spoke with the newsroom on Tuesday.
Well, the first thing we have to remember is that what GCOM's functions are, because people are getting carried away and saying that GCOM should do this and do that and do the other. When GCOM's functions are to, under Article 162 of the Constitution, to exercise general direction and supervision over the registration of electors, which has gone, and the administrative conduct of all elections of members of the National Assembly. So their function is to exercise direction and supervision over the administrative conduct of elections. They don't have any other powers. They have to run elections. Whatever the votes are, that is the end of the matter. They then issue a declaration of results and the president is sworn in. So what has happened is that we have ignored the statements of poll, and in order to erase difficulties, what those difficulties are, I don't know, because they could have simply taken the statements of poll and determined what the numbers were. They have chosen not to do that. They've gone into a lengthy recount process. They have numbers again which match the only statements of poll that we have seen. So what they now have to do is to take those numbers and declare the results. GCOM is still bound by the Constitution and by the Representation of the People Act. So it can't just do whatever it wants to do. They do have the obligation to follow the law. They can't do whatever they want. The decisions have to be reasonable. They have to be lawful and so on. So they're circumscribed by what they can do. GCOM has ballots in boxes. They've taken those ballots out of the boxes. They have ascertained what those ballots say, and they have tabulated them, and they have verified them. So we know what the ballots in the boxes said. And that is what GCOM has to do. As I said, their function is to direct and supervise the administrative conduct of elections. So they can do nothing else other than take the numbers that they have in the ballots and declare the results.
We tell you now that the University of Guyana's Council has announced Professor Paloma Mohammed Martin as the Vice Chancellor, the first woman to be appointed in this position in the 57-year history of the university. A statement from the university on Tuesday revealed that Mohammed Martin, who led the field of other stellar contenders, secured the Council's endorsement. The Council also extended its appreciation to all applicants and shortlisted candidates and to the search committee and teams of evaluators for their months of diligent service. Still ahead on the news, Room Guyana to reopen to limited incoming flights from July 1, and as bodies piled up in New York from COVID-19, a Guyanese senator has spoken out. The Ministry of Education on Tuesday said schools across the country commenced preparations for exam students to return to school on June 15. The students who will be writing the National Grade 6 Assessment, that's the NGSA, the Caribbean Secondary Education Certificate, CSEC, and the Caribbean Advanced Proficiency Examination, CAPE, in July and August, are required to return to schools on Monday. In addition to the public health protocols that will be implemented in all schools, cleaners across the country are ongoing training in infection prevention and control practice, all to prevent the spread of COVID-19. The Education Ministry closed schools across the country on March 16 with the emergence of the COVID-19 pandemic. The Ministry of Education announced that beginning June 8, teachers and auxiliary staff will return to schools. This is to facilitate the adequate and correct preparation of schools as is outlined in the gazetted and published examination order. According to the order, all schools are required to have appropriate sanitation stations, including adequate water supply and soap, a sick bay area, floor signage and markings indicating physical distance of approximately 6 feet apart, and a designated waiting area. Students will be required to wear masks and their temperature will be tested. This year, NGSA will be written in July 1 and 2, while CSEC and CAPE will be administered from July 13 to August 4. The Guyana Teachers Union and the Amerindian People's Association have raised concerns about the dates, noting that students are not prepared to sit the examinations while the COVID-19 still poses a threat to their health and that of teachers. Guyana's international airports are scheduled to reopen on July 1, 2020 to limited incoming flights for citizens, permanent residents, international workers and agencies and diplomats. Isnal Patwa reports.
The Guyana Civil Aviation Authority GCAA on Monday during an online conference held under the theme Path Clear Skies launched a 4-phase plan to reopen the airports during the COVID-19 pandemic. Director General of the GCAA, Egbert Field, said the first of the 4 phases is planning. This will run for approximately 4 weeks and includes repatriation flights, special organized flights, outgoing flights, medevac flights, technical stops, training, and also establishing regulations and standard operating procedures. The second phase implementation includes the reopening for limited incoming flights for returning Guyanese and international workers scheduled to start on July 1st, 2020 to July 31st, 2020. The third phase will include an expansion of the second phase and will run from August 1st, 2020 to December 31st, 2020 and is expected to include scheduled outgoing flights. The final phase is expected to start in January 2021 and run for a 3-month period. Guyana's airports are likely to be fully operational in early 2021.
Our stakeholders will have to work together. It would not happen with one person or one entity. The commercial industry will restart it, but they must come on board. And I know that they are planning and they are coming on board. We have some of the airlines which will commence operation. Caribbean Airlines is possibly in June, Copa possibly in July, American, they would like to start in July out of Miami. They don't foresee themselves coming until December from New York. Liat is awaiting our opening, and JetBlue, which we are anxiously waiting for, has indicated that they will now make their launch sometime in spring of 2020. These airlines have got to prepare after having sat on the ground for a long time, the ceased operation, they have to start up. And not only in terms of their operation, but also in terms of the airports, which I would relate to our Jagan International Airport and the Eugene F. Correa Airport.
Guyana has entered a soft opening phase where approval was granted by the National COVID-19 Task Force for a limited number of repatriation flights for Guyanese stranded overseas. The first batch of Guyanese arrived at the Jagan International Airport, CJIA, on Saturday last. Operations Manager at the Chadijigan International Airport, Alvin Majid, spoke what measures are being implemented to facilitate the safe movement of passengers.
We have utilized our digital screens, advertising screens, to display COVID-19 messages, videos, as to warn or caution persons. We have also added audio to our public address system, messages again for passengers, advise them to adhere to the COVID-19 precautions.
Other measures at the two international airports to combat the spread of COVID-19 include fumigation of check-in and arrival, immigration and customs areas, erecting sanitization stations at entrances and exits, portable health booths for passenger evaluation and disinfectant and sanitization, placing signs and social distance markings, and reassigning seating arrangements, installation of thermal imaging equipment to monitor passenger temperatures, and enhancement of crowd control protocols, among others. Meanwhile, Caribbean Airlines has announced new measures when it is operating again. Passengers will be required to check in 4 hours prior before departure. Boarding will now be from the back of the aircraft, and passengers will disembark from the front of the aircraft. No onboard meal services will be available, and social distancing guidelines will also be established, and everyone will be required to wear a face mask. Reporting for the newsroom, I am Isanella Pato.
A Brooklyn funeral home has been reprimanded by Guyanese State Senator Roxanne Prasad for storing decomposing bodies in an inhumane manner. In an interview for the newsroom, Prasad related the horrors of the COVID-19 pandemic among the Guyanese community in New York, sharing the heartbreaking story of how a mother and daughter lost their lives within 24 hours in Brooklyn. Jennifer Ganesh Japar filed this report from New York.
Canarsie and Flatlands neighborhoods have seen one of the highest coronavirus infection rates in all of Brooklyn. It has been topping the count of deaths in New York, with 4% of its residents testing positive for the virus. Canarsie is also home to Guyanese State Senator Roxanne Prasad. Serving more than 318,000 people in her district, it stretches from Canarsie, East New York, and all the way to Sheepshead Bay. Prasad has a seat on the state assembly. She gets to influence government. The most recent decision at her hands was holding accountable the Brooklyn funeral home, which left dozens of decomposing bodies in the streets in unrefrigerated containers, some being Guyanese.
I had the debacle of a funeral home in my district that was storing bodies in the vehicles outside of that. And so I was dealing with the U-Haul. It was not only U-Hauls, people saw the U-Haul, and it was U-Haul, but there were cars also that they had bodies in. And so I was dealing with that. You know, people were calling, you know, my father is there, my mother is there, and I can't get any answer. You know, the state sent somebody down to work, and so I'm talking with those people, talking with the Department of Health here to find out what is going on. You know, it's crazy. You know, when people are calling and telling you, oh, you know, there's blood running down the street from a truck, and you know that there are bodies in it.
Prasad added that many people try to justify the actions of the funeral home, but as state senator, she felt that their actions were unjustified.
When you actively go out there and get a U-Haul or a Mack truck or whatever, you already knew you had a capacity issue. So when you're stacking bodies on top of each other in unrefrigerated trucks, you are ready. This is no longer capacity issue. You have to bear some responsibility. So, you know, people are like, oh, it's Caribbean people. It doesn't matter who you are. Oh, you know, the person said he was trying to help people. No. You still have to bear some responsibility.
All of the deaths that occurred in her district were recorded by her office. Some still came as a shock to her.
But I then had a mother and daughter who died a day apart. One lives upstairs, one lived downstairs, and they died a day apart. It was just horrible. I'm in the office and sit there. One day I was writing just condolence cards all day. There's a stack of condolence cards to families, including that to the family of the mother and daughter who had passed away within, less than 24 hours apart.
The residents of Brooklyn are cautiously trying to go forward with life as normal as possible, bearing in mind the radical changes that occurred over the past months. New York reopened some parts of the economy on Monday, June 8th, after suffering more than 205,000 infections and 22,000 deaths. With a special report from New York, I'm Jennifer Jabbar.
Guyana on June 9 recorded 2 more COVID-19 cases from 38 additional tests done. Dr. Arteneza Hamilton, the Director of Primary Healthcare, revealed that Guyana is among 3 countries in the Caribbean to report new cases.
The situation in Guyana as of the 9th of June 2020 is as follows. There were 38 tests done as of today, June 9th, and we are reporting 2 new cases, bringing the number of confirmed cases to 156. Our COVID-19 deaths remain at 12. To date, the total number of persons tested is 1,854, with the total number of negative cases being 1,698. We currently have 86 persons that have recovered, 58 active cases in institutional isolation, 1 patient in the COVID ICU, and 14 persons in institutional quarantine. I wish to turn the spotlight on the Caribbean. As you are aware, most of the Caribbean countries managed to limit the transmission of COVID-19 in their country, with Guyana, Jamaica, and Haiti being among the only countries that continue to report new cases. Bravo to Barbados and Trinidad, who have reported no new cases in 14 and 7 days respectively, and Antigua, that has not reported any new cases in 35 days. I wish to underscore and remind our fellow Guyanese to be cognizant of the contributory factors leading to the decline in number of reported cases. Physical distancing, cough and sneeze etiquette, hand washing, and most importantly, staying at home. Let's prioritize them so that Guyana too can begin to see no new cases.
Now, a total of 11 parties contested the March 2 general and regional elections. Of that number, 9 were launched in 2019, and although they are young on the political stage, they endured a brutal political process that is not yet over. With the media not allowed into the recount center, they served as an independent voice, fact-checking the big political powers and keeping the Guyana Elections Commission in check. Here's Newsroom's Bibi Katoon.
The recount of all votes cast over 3 months ago completed after 34 days at the Artichoke Conference Center. Throughout this process, the voices that have come to serve as the breath of fresh air, bringing the truth to the public and keeping the Guyana Elections Commission in check, are not the ones you've come to know. These are all smaller political party leaders, parties which were launched just last year to contest the March 2nd general and regional elections.
If there's ever a time to form a party, it would not have been 2020. But then again, if there ever was a time to form a party, it would have been 2020.
Most of these persons you've come to know and rely on post-March 5th, even though some of them did not get even 1,000 votes from Guyanese. One of those persons is the Citizenship Initiative's leader, Ms. Rhonda Lam, who spent every day at the Artichoke Conference Center looking over the recount. Our party gained 680 votes at the end of the process.
As a new party, we literally, we've been joking that we've been thrown into the pits because our very first round out the gates, we ended up with controversy. Well, we usually do, but then a national recount, which is in our history has never happened before. As we sat through that recount, I've been here for every single day of that period. I've always been in tabulation, but I've also been within the, occasionally I would go into the counting stations to have an ID. And so that process of seeing what it entails, even at the count, because that count is hidden from the public. So you see how the ballots are taken out, they're counted, all of it have to be reconciled. And so that process has now been placed in the public domain. And in fact, all of the politicians for all of the parties have seen that process unfold.
Lam, a teacher by profession, said it was never about gaining power, but making a difference.
What TCI formed itself for was to bring citizen awareness and to show the public that, an ordinary citizen, not with a big party machinery behind them, can take part in the electoral process. I mean, you do need money for it, but we managed to get that. So the idea was never about power. The idea was never about the votes. We got the votes and, persons are laughing. It's only 680. That's 680 people who said to us, we trust you. We want you in positions to help us.
The smaller political parties were all deemed PPP surrogates in the campaign period leading up to the elections. But now with the People's Progressive Party winning 15,000 more votes than the incumbent APNU-AFC, the parties which have managed to gain enough votes to have one seat in the 65-member National Assembly have made it clear that they will not play along to the new government's whims.
You see, our problem is systemic. The reason we've been so polarized is that there's a winner-take-all system. So today we have a winner, but we have a loser. So we have a triumphant party, but we also have an abject and desperate party. That is what polarizes us and creates this mess. So we have to incrementally, slowly, as we can do with only one seat, propose changes that make the system more inclusive and give the party that is in opposition a greater say in decision making. And we have proposals to make that happen, and you will see in the future we are going to be doing that.
That was chairman of Union United Guyana, Timothy Jonas. An attorney by profession, he became popular for his bluntness relating to the elections, electors, and those in charge of the process. But Jonas said the recount has also served as an important learning experience for him and his party.
I have been practicing law for over 20 years, but I have never gone into electoral law to see the system firsthand. I have been very much a commercial lawyer. So this has been a new area, and also seeing it implemented firsthand has been new.
ANOG, the New Movement, and the Liberty and Justice Party joined their list before the elections. Through this agreement, the parties will each provide a candidate to sit in the National Assembly over the 5-year period, starting with the LJP, which garnered most votes out of the three parties.
We were not politically experienced. We had no politicians in our group. We've never gone through any elections. So as a new party, we were literally thrown into the deep end right away. For everything that we thought we would not have to face, we thought it would have been a very smooth cycle. We've had to face all of it, and it's been a very, very taxing yet satisfying activity from a political party's perspective.
The third party is led by a team of doctors, and though they only managed to gain 244 votes, they will also get to sit in Parliament. At this point, party member Dr. Josh Kanai hopes that there will be no more court cases, and the declarations from the elections will be made shortly.
And from that recount is where the majority of the experience I have personally gained along with the new movement. We have gained a lot of experience through this, and I'm thankful for the opportunity to have gained it, but I'm not so thankful for the circumstances which it occurred under, right? However, I would do it again, but I'm hoping that our Guyanese people can mature and can see it in a way whereby we never have to come back to something like this.
Some have said that these small parties are only here for this period, and after the elections they will disappear. However, Dexter George of Change Guyana said this is not the case. Gaining from the experience he would have learned during this process, he said his party will remain and will return in 2025 stronger.
We are going to be here for the next elections and the next elections that follow this. It's a learning curve. Most people would say it's just a learning curve. If you do realize that Change Guyana only had about 2 months to get ready to be involved, and we've made such an impact.
As the process winds up, the work of another group of persons continue, at least until the Guyana Elections Commission declare the results of the elections. Those are what we have come to call container watchers. or the guardians of the containers. These men and women have formed a camaraderie across political differences as they sacrifice sleep to guard the ballots of the Guyanese citizens. We spoke with someone new to the elections process and a PPP member who has been part of elections since 1992.
Then we had to be guarding containers, right? And that was quite interesting. For a first timer coming into this game, we guarded containers, and those containers held the ballots, secret ballots, sacred ballots, I would call it.
And this thing was a 24-hour watch, meaning that we did not take our eyes off those containers from since probably March 4th up to yesterday. And we secured them. We ensured they moved more than once. They were here. They went back to GCOM. They came back here. Some came from different parts of the country. And we ensured that the integrity of those containers was always maintained at all times until the recount was finished. And this was, this was a 24-hour, and it was, a lot of people was involved in it. Everybody was volunteer. What was more pronounced is that people that came forward, not, we had former ministers, we had member of parliaments, we had central committee member of the party, we had people from civil society. They all came forward to volunteer to ensure the integrity of this ballot box until the recount was over. It's not the end of the process because we still go to keep an eye on the container because the declaration has been made.
Reporting from outside of the Artichon Conference Center, the site used for the national recount of all votes cast on March 2nd, I am Bibi Katoon.
When the newsroom returns, the financial, weather and bird reports along with sport. Stay tuned.